Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to talk about My Hero Academia 171, and starting off we have Gentle and La Brava from last week's chapter. Nothing really surprising. I mean, we do learn a lot more about these characters, which I found something really interesting, because we really didn't know for sure whether they were actually full-fledged villains, were they just criminals, what is it that they're doing, why are they doing what they're doing, and so on and so forth. And this week we kind of learned that they're doing what they're doing because they want to kind of regain the position that they had before the whole Stain ordeal, because apparently after Stain became a big deal, they started to lose views on their videos and whatnot. Meaning they've been doing this for a long time, but they haven't really been this desperate for a while because they didn't really have to be. And I found that to be really interesting how they're kind of like using villains or looking at villains to see how would villains do in order to get all of this attention. What did they do? And while they're not really villains themselves, they kind of use the whole thing with Stain and the League of Villains to kind of learn from it, I suppose, because we see how Gentle is wanting to, he wants to invade the UA Academy. And to some people this may seem like it's a straight up villainous deed, but I wouldn't really call it a villainous deed or a villainous act. I would call it more like something that will get him a lot of attention, because it really will. This doesn't necessarily have to end up being a huge fight. And I don't really think it's going to be, because when you look at the whole convenience store case, which was last week, this week we learned that the reason they did that wasn't really just to cause a scene or to get views in itself, but they wanted to show people a truth behind this convenience store chain. They wanted to show people that they were actually selling expired products, and even though some of the public, they don't really agree that the store was in the wrong and whatnot, that was at the end of the day the reason, or at least the main reason, why they did that store in particular. So their stunts aren't really as random. They do pick out certain places, I suppose, and certain acts, and although it will give them views and whatnot, there is still a bigger purpose to them most of the time. Whether that's going to be the case at the UA, that's a whole other question, because they want to kind of match the whole Stain thing and the League of Villains. They want to really reach that level of popularity, that level of attention. So it's going to be interesting to see what approach they take while they invade the UA Academy, because I'm pretty sure they're going to invade during the festival. That just seems like the logical thing to happen, given that we're gonna have this whole festival arc going on now with the live performance and whatever else the other classes have in store for us. It's going to be a very huge event. The public is going to be there. It's going to be hosted by the school, of course, but it's going to be quite interesting, I suppose. So it's going to be kind of like the sports festival in a way, except it's going to be a lot less athletic and more to do with gathering people and just having a good time. That's really the essence of it. They want to just relax, have some stress relief for some of the people. Now, enough about La Brava and Gentle, because there isn't really much to talk about. I'll be honest, there is only the whole thing that they were doing what they did because they wanted to kind of open people's eyes. The J store, whatever that store chain was called, was doing something wrong. Well, at least they thought it was wrong. If you ask me, it is quite wrong too, but that's irrelevant right now. But the big thing about this chapter, in my opinion, was actually this whole thing with Bakugo. And I don't know if people will agree with me when I say that Bakugo really showed an interesting side this chapter, where earlier on in the chapter, after the whole La Brava and Gentle thing, we see how Bakugo overhears the general studies kind of trash talk the hero department, because they say that the hero department in itself is starting all of these conflicts, which, as we know, it's not the truth. And because of that, when Jiro kind of asked Bakugo if he could play the drums, to help out with the event, he kind of hesitated for a moment, because he doesn't want to do it to help out people who trash talk him. The general department, for instance, they weren't really being nice to the hero department, so Bakugo doesn't want to show any courtesy, as he calls it, to people that sickens him. And I found that to be really interesting, because right now in the story we haven't really got too much insight on, I guess, Bakugo's actual ideology. We don't really know exactly where he stands, apart from the fact that he wants to become a hero. He wants to be the best, the strongest. We know that much. Nothing weird about about that. I mean, most people want to be the strongest, and Bakugo is no different. The only difference being from most of the characters in the school that we've encountered is that he actually has a chance at getting there. So when it came to this whole thing where they wanted him to play the drums, because he was quite good at playing the drums, as we saw, like he's apparently had some lessons and whatnot, which made Jiro kind of look up to Bakugo, which isn't really normal. People don't typically look up at Bakugo. They usually look down on him because of the fact that he usually puts people below himself. They don't really want, you know, to acknowledge him as, you know, a good person, but Jiro kind of says that if you do this for me, you'll be a good person. And I thought that was really incredible how she's willing to kind of lift Bakugo up if he actually helps out with this event. Now, he did still accept the offer of participating, however, he doesn't want to do it to help others relieve their stress. He still wants to really show the other departments that the hero course is the best of the best, and that whoever trash talks them, they're full of shit, basically. I am honestly siding with Bakugo on this one if I had to, because what the hero studies said wasn't even true. Like, they assume that the heroes are starting all of these fights. I mean, it's not too surprising, I suppose, because only Class 1A have really been running into this much trouble. 1B was part of the whole thing at the field trip arc, but apart from that, Class 1B haven't really been too included in all of the villain activity as much as Class 1A has, so I can understand why they would look down on people like Bakugo, Midoriya, you know, Todoroki, all of these people from 1A, because they have in fact been very active when it comes to villains given their young age, especially Midoriya, Kirishima, Tsuyu, and Ochako now with the whole overhaul incident. And then we have Todoroki, Ida, and Izuku during the Stain thing. And then of course, let's not forget the whole thing when Bakugo was taken hostage. So there's a lot of villain stuff going on with Class 1A. I mean, that's not really a surprise, and everybody knows this. Everyone at UA actually knows that 1A is extremely active when it comes to hero activity, even though they're not full-fledged heroes, which is actually something that I guess a lot of people don't like, especially the general department, because the general department, as far as I understand it, I could be wrong in this, but a lot of people from the general department, they were people who failed to actually make it into the hero course, meaning they're obviously full of envy, you know, they want to be in the hero course, but they couldn't really quite cut it, so they had to do with the general department. At least if they wanted to go to UA, which I guess, you know, since it's the best school, they still want to go to the UA Academy. I mean, most people probably do at least go to some of the bigger schools. So I'm really glad to see how Bakugo's way of thinking is very different from everyone else when it comes to his live performance, because he's just willing to show every other class that 1A is the best of the best, and the others may not agree with his way of thinking, but at the end of the day, if that's what makes him join, you know, I think they're going to accept his attitude, because I mean, he is a really good drummer apparently, especially given how little he has practiced. Anyway, that's really all I had to say about this week's chapter of My Hero Academia. I really hope you enjoyed, so I'd love to know what you think about this chapter down below in the comments, and as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new to my channel. This has been your host, Chaotic Plus, and remember everyone, Toga is waifu, Toga is laifu.